so much. Man, what a warm welcome. What a warm welcome, and I haven't done anything. I'm never going to top it. Thanks. Good night. Thank you. Love you too. Love you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Wow, man, this is great. I got to thank Kristen for the invitation. This is really wonderful to be here. I want to thank all of you for showing up amid all the crazy restrictions that the government is putting on us. You still showed up, still standing up for life. It's great. This is the year to do it. This is the year to do it because this year the Supreme Court is considering a case that could finally overrule Roe versus Wade. It's amazing. The most egregious judicial decision in the history of our country, 49 years ago. It has been 49 years since Roe v. Wade was wrongly decided. Since that time, there have been 49 marches for life. Now, many pro-life advocates are asking themselves if there will be a 50th. Not because the pro-life movement has lost momentum, not because the pro-life fighters have lost their courage, but because the national license to abortion could finally be abolished. Now, I do think that there will be another March for Life next year. I think there will be another Students for Life Summit. Not because I think that the court will necessarily shirk its responsibility to abolish this fictional constitutional right, but because there will be so much more work to be done. Abortion advocates accuse pro-lifers of having more ambitious goals than we let on. They warn their supporters that overturning Roe v. Wade will not be the end of the pro-life movement, it will only be the beginning. They warn that we won't be satisfied merely sending the issue of abortion back to the states. They warn that conservatives will not be satisfied to say that states like Tennessee, my own state, maybe they'll get rid of abortion. States like New York, the state where I was born and raised, they won't get rid of abortion. They'll keep abortion up until the moment of birth, and that's fine. That's the will of the people. That's their choice. These abortion advocates believe that pro-lifers will view the overturning of Roe v. Wade as only the first major victory in a crusade to banish the scourge of abortion from our country forever, and they are absolutely right. There is no constitutional right to abortion. There is no other sort of right either, at the state level or anywhere else. The disgraced former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo. You remember that guy? Oh, yeah. So it's such a shame. A fellow Italian, a fellow New Yorker brings shame on our people. Such a shame. Andrew Cuomo might pretend that there is some sort of right to an abortion. He might push through a law allowing abortion up until the moment of birth. He might sign the bill. He might light the World Trade Center up in pink to celebrate the occasion. And even then, there is no right to an abortion. Not in New York, not anywhere else. Human law is law only by virtue of its accordance with right reason, and thus it is manifest that it flows from the eternal law. Insofar as it deviates from right reason, it is called an unjust law. In such a case, it is no law at all, but rather a species of violence. Those are the words of St. Thomas Aquinas. You know that you're in the right place when Thomas Aquinas gets a round of applause. That's right. A round of applause for the angelic doctor. Now, if I have learned anything over the past couple of years, it is that we are supposed to trust the doctors. It's very important to trust the doctors. And there is no doctor more worthy of trust than St. Thomas Aquinas. An unjust law is no law at all. This concept can be difficult to grasp. It becomes clearer when we see it applied to abortion, which in a very tangible way involves the killing of a helpless baby. From this unjust law, which is no more than a form of violence, comes the supposed right to an abortion. But this right violates other rights, most importantly, the right to life of the baby. Abortion advocates cannot really refute this right. They sometimes try, usually by denying either the baby's life or the baby's humanity. But those arguments fail to persuade because we know that babies in the womb are alive, not dead, and human, not marsupial. So rather than trying to argue the inarguable, the more sophisticated abortion advocates will not attempt to refute a baby's right to life. They will instead simply ignore it. This is why the abortion movement relies so heavily on euphemisms. The intentional killing of a baby in the womb becomes reproductive rights, which is ironic because it is neither reproductive nor a right. It's wrong and it stops reproduction. They will refer to women's health. You know, you call your grandmother up. You say, "Hey, Grandma, how are you doing?" She says, "Oh, Sonny, the roof's leaking, the oven broke, my hip hurts, but at least I have my right to an abortion." Is that what she says? I don't think so. I don't think that's what she means by health. No, that's right. Abortion advocates use euphemisms because the reality of their butchery is repellent to all right-minded people. They can only justify this supposed right to abortion by denying the reality of what exercising that right would mean. And rights that are disconnected from reality are no rights at all. The denial of reality lies at the very heart of the abortion movement. You don't need to take my word for it. You can read this admission yourself in Planned Parenthood v. Casey. The legal arguments in Casey, much like Roe, were pretty thin. Abortion rights were discovered in the emanations and the penumbras and the invisible ink that the framers wrote in the Constitution. So the court took to dime store philosophizing in a line so grandiose and shallow that it could only have been written by Justice Anthony Kennedy. The court declared, quote, "At the heart of liberty is the right to define one's own concept of existence, of meaning, of the universe, and of the mystery of human life. Beliefs about these matters could not define the attributes of personhood were they formed under the compulsion of the state." I am happy to say that I have never consumed enough marijuana to understand what Anthony Kennedy meant by that line. I don't know. Justice Antonin Scalia dubbed Kennedy's sophomoric babble the sweet mystery of life passage that ate the rule of law. From what I can read between the smoke clouds that waft off the very paper, Kennedy and the court are saying that people have the right to define reality and that the government has no right to dispel their delusions and enforce a different concept of reality. Now, I have tested this theory. I have. It turns out the theory is not true, you see, because I define existence and meaning and the universe within a moral order, and I define the sweet mystery of human life as being worthy of protection. That is to say, I define a world in which abortion is a crime. And nevertheless, Anthony Kennedy and the Supreme Court have rejected my concept of existence. They have mandated a different and deadlier definition, namely their own belief, which they enforce under the compulsion of the state. That passage from Casey, the sweet mystery of life passage, may be the single funniest line ever written in a Supreme Court opinion. I only hesitate to call it funny because its effect is so evil. But as my friend Andrew Clavin points out, if you take... Not as much applause as St. Thomas Aquinas, but that's fine. That's all right. No, that's fair. I mean, I think he'd give you that. As my friend Andrew Clavin points out, if you could take away the suffering, evil would be pretty funny, because evil is so obviously disconnected from reality, from what we should be doing. Contrary to Justice Kennedy's romantic poetry, none of us has the right to define reality according to our disordered desires and delusions. There is nothing liberating about living in fantasy. And even if there were, this supposed right to define our own concept of existence would disappear the moment that someone else's right to define existence in any way contradicted our own. You're seeing this play out right now in the debate over transgenderism. Some people say that men cannot become women, and so men should not be allowed to use the girls' bathroom and play in girls' sports. Makes sense to me. I happen to favor that view. But some people, you see, they have a different concept of existence and the sweet meaning of life. They believe that men can become women, and so the men should be allowed into the ladies' room and they should be permitted to beat women at sports. These concepts, I know, that's not my view. These concepts of existence are mutually exclusive. Only one of them can win out. The government inevitably will compel belief one way or the other. It's a very smart baby out there crying, understands what a crazy belief that is that's being pushed. Crazy. In recent decades, many conservatives have been reluctant to wield the power of the state to enforce our political vision. They'll talk about free speech and freedom of religion and academic freedom. They'll do that until they're blue in the face. But they rarely manage to say anything about what we should do with all those rights, what we should say, what we should believe, what we should teach our kids. It reminds me of those people who come on TV every year, every time there's an election cycle, and they say, it doesn't matter who you vote for, only that you vote. Well, why? Why would that be the case? The point of voting is not just to get the sticker and post a selfie on Instagram. The point of voting is to get good government. If you're going to vote for the good guy, then go vote. If you're going to vote for the bad guy, we don't want you to. Go stay home. The procedure of voting matters somewhat, but the substance of what we're voting for matters much more. Until recently, many conservatives were applying the same kind of thinking to abortion. They will say that the worst part of Roe v. Wade is that it took the question of abortion away from the states, away from the people, and gave it to the court. They will say that the worst part of Roe v. Wade is that it compromised self-government. If Tennessee wants to outlaw abortion, great. If California wants to keep it, that's fine. I don't think that the worst part of Roe v. Wade is the rearrangement of how certain laws are made. I don't think the worst part of Roe v. Wade is the empowerment of the judiciary at the expense of the legislature. I think the worst part of Roe v. Wade is the killing of all the babies. That's the worst part. The procedural aspects of Roe matter. The substance matters much, much more. In fairness to these conservatives, I suspect that some of them have emphasized the procedural side for tactical reasons. They think it's easier to sell overturning the left's most sacred court case. We are called to be innocent as doves and wise as serpents. Okay, fine. But we are now looking at the very real possibility of a post-Roe world, and it will no longer suffice to speak in the abstract about returning the question of abortion to the states. We must now focus on what to do once the issue does make it back to the states. We must discuss the total outlawing of abortion nationwide. The reason to outlaw abortion is that it's wrong. I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know. You all know that it's wrong. Direct abortion is gravely contrary to the moral law. This fact does not depend upon the opinion of voters or state representatives. If every single person in America wanted abortion to be legal, still it should be outlawed. If every single person in America did want to outlaw abortion, well, that would be great too, all the better. We would love that. But either way, the immorality of abortion remains unchanged. As a colleague of mine is fond of saying, facts don't care about your feelings. All right, enough about Ben. Get out. No, enough of Ben. As long as we don't get a Matt Walsh chant, that's fine by me. Because we live in a democracy, or at least something vaguely resembling a democracy, as a practical matter, the opinion of voters does matter a great deal. The great news is that the majority of people are on our side. A Marist poll that was released just a few days ago by the Knights of Columbus has found that 71%, did you see that? You did see this poll. 71% of Americans support legal limits on abortion. This includes 93% of Republicans, we might expect that. This includes a whopping 70% of independents, and this includes even 49% of Democrats. Great. Democrats, whose party in recent years has transformed their views on abortion from a necessary evil to a positive good. Democrats used to call for abortion as a safe, legal, and rare remedy. Today, they encourage people to shout their abortions, which they insist must be available on demand without apology. During the 2020 Democrat presidential primary debates, you might remember that one candidate, Julian Castro, he took his support of abortion so far that he actually demanded abortion rights for men. He did. Mr. Castro said, just because a woman, or let's not forget someone in the trans community, a trans female, is poor, doesn't mean they shouldn't have the right to exercise the right to choose. Now, it is difficult for trans females to exercise the right to abortion because trans females don't have ovaries or a uterus. They have trouble procuring abortions because they can't get pregnant because they are men, and that makes it difficult. I'm sure the scientists will figure it out at some point. But Julian's impassioned defense of the abortion rights of men shows you just how far his party has moved in the direction of abortion. And still, almost half of Democrats support placing legal limits on abortion. It is one of the clearest issues, along with crime and immigration, actually, but abortion in particular, where there exists a massive chasm between what the people want and what elite politicians are offering. The people think that abortion in America has gone much, much too far, and young Americans know this better than anyone else. Contrary to the consensus view of so many boomer elites in both parties, millennials and Zoomers support curtailing abortion. A new poll released by this very organization, Students for Life, has found that a full 80% of younger Americans believe that they should have the right to vote on abortion-related policies in their states, implying at least an overturning of Roe. This is up significantly from the already robust 66% who said that just last year. So why are younger Americans turning against abortion? Because it's bad. Thank you very much. It's simple. Ask a simple question, get a simple answer. How do we know it's bad? Well, how do we know it's bad? One way I think that has affected this is scientific advancement. We can see what goes on as the baby grows in the womb. Within the first 4 weeks of pregnancy, we know the baby's face, eyes, mouth, jaw, throat, and heart begin to form. Today, you can kill that baby anywhere in the country. By 6 to 8 weeks, The baby has ears, the beginnings of his brain, spinal cord, nervous system, digestive tract, sensory organs, and bone. He has a heartbeat, and in 43 states, you can kill him. By 16 weeks, the baby has fingers, toes, eyelids, eyebrows, eyelashes, fingernails, toenails, hair, teeth, bones, a functioning nervous system, and fully developed genitals. He can suck his thumb and yawn, and in over 40 states, you can kill him. By 21 weeks, a baby can respond with movement to the voice of his father. He can respond to voices outside the mother's body. He can survive outside the womb, and in 40 states, you can kill him. By 23 weeks, a baby's eyes will open. He will have visible fingerprints and toe prints, and he will very likely survive if born prematurely. Also in 29 states, you can kill him. At this point, the laws get a little bit blurry because 22 states then impose certain degrees of legal bans on killing fully formed, viable infants. Remarkably, 7 states do not. Oregon, for example, has had no abortion restrictions whatsoever for the past 3.5 decades, meaning that a mother can murder her baby as she gives birth with no penalty. Since 2017, Oregon has also funded these killings with taxpayer dollars. And Oregon is not alone. Oregon is not alone. My money, my choice, someone just said. It's a good argument. Oregon is not alone among the barbaric states. Even states like New York, which purport to restrict abortion in some cases, really leave the door open to abortion at any point up until birth. They use vague language, such as threats to the life of the mother. Abortion is never medically necessary. By pretending that it is, infanticidal politicians, such as Andrew Cuomo, can hide the enormity of their laws. Not only did Cuomo's Reproductive Health Act change the law to permit abortion up until the moment of birth, it changed the New York Penal Code. Until that law, if you killed a pregnant woman, you would be charged with double homicide. After the law, single homicide. Cuomo's law was welcome news to Anthony Hobson, who in 2019 murdered his pregnant girlfriend by stabbing her in the stomach. Prosecutors initially hoped to charge Hobson with double murder, but thanks to Cuomo's psychopathic law, he will get a much reduced sentence. New York has long been a key city for the abortion industry. As New York shows us, we see the particularly devastating effects of abortion on racial minorities. Nationally, 36% of all abortions are performed on black women, despite black people making up just 13% of the US population. In New York City, 41% of pregnancies end in abortion, which is a horrifying figure in and of itself. Among black women, that number jumps to 60%. More black babies in New York are aborted than are born. In 2011, the pro-life group Life Always put a billboard up in the city that pointed out that in New York, the most dangerous place for a black person is in his mother's womb. The Attorney General, the current state Attorney General, Letitia James, then on the city council, she called the billboard highly offensive. Very offensive, isn't it? The Life Always board member, Stephen Broden, also black, responded that the billboard is far less offensive than the genocide that is currently going on in New York, specifically against black babies. I think he got the better part of the argument. I suspect that this fact might have something to do with Americans, and specifically younger Americans, pronounced and growing opposition to abortion. There are supposed to be more of us. There are supposed to be a lot more of us. The commonly cited number is that there should be about 60 million more of us. That's the number of abortions that have taken place since Roe v. Wade. That's the population of Italy. That's 10 times the number of Jews killed by Hitler during the Holocaust. That's 35 times the number of people killed by Stalin in the Gulag, 750 times the number of people slaughtered by the Aztecs to appease their gods at Tenochtitlan. 60 million, the number is astounding. And yet, the reality is even worse, because that number fails to take into account time. It has been almost half a century since the decision. Not only are we missing the 60 million people killed in that time through abortion, we're missing their children, and potentially their grandchildren too. In 1972, the US fertility rate was 2.03 children per family, right around replacement level. Today, that rate has declined, in large part because of Roe. Now it's 1.78. Let's call it an even 2 children per family for a nice round number. When you consider the number of children who were never conceived because their parents were killed before they were born, the number of missing people doubles from 60 million to 120 million. That isn't the end of the story either. Because Roe was decided so long ago, some of those babies snuffed out in the 70s and even the early 80s would not have been just parents. They would have been grandparents by now as well. Let's just focus on only the babies who would have been born in the 70s. Let's say only they could be grandparents now. Let's be even more conservative. Let's just look at half of those babies who would have been born in the 70s. 1/2 of 1/5 of 60 million. That's 6 million people. Let's be even more conservative. Let's just say 1/4 of them. Even 1/4, that's 3 million people, in addition to the 60 million killed and their 60 million children who were never born, who should be with us today and are missing. Even if Roe versus Wade were overturned tomorrow, abortion were outlawed throughout the country tomorrow, those 60 million people, with their 60 million expected children, with their 60 million expected grandchildren, 180 million people missing over the course of just 3 generations. That's well over half the population of the United States. When you consider the enormity of those numbers, you see the downstream effects of abortion in so many other policy areas. Take immigration, one of the most hotly contested political issues. The reason that no politician of either party has made real progress on immigration is because, beyond the question of one's own preferences, is a question of necessity. We're not making enough Americans. We just don't have enough of us coming out. Live births have fallen to 3-decade lows, just under 3.8 million babies a year. The birth rate fell to 1.7 births per couple, well below replacement. We need an additional 1 million new Americans every year just to stave off social and economic collapse. 1 million. Does that number ring a bell? That's almost precisely the same number of American babies aborted last year. 1 million, almost exactly the same number of legal immigrants we imported last year to make up for the American babies that we killed. End abortion, and the immigration fight becomes a non-issue. St. Teresa of Calcutta pointed out the far-reaching. So Thomas Aquinas is the favorite, St. Teresa of Calcutta, and then Andrew Klavan. Ben and Andrew are kind of, okay, that's fine. St. Teresa of Calcutta pointed out the wide-reaching social effects of abortion. She said the greatest destroyer of peace today is abortion. She said this in a 1994 speech to the UN. It is a war against the child, a direct killing of the innocent child, murder by the mother herself. And if we accept that a mother can kill even her own child, how can we tell other people not to kill one another? By abortion, the mother does not learn to love, but kills even her own child to solve her problems. And by abortion, the father is told that he does not have to take any responsibility at all for the children he's brought into the world. That father is likely to put other women into the same trouble. Any country that accepts abortion is not teaching its people to love, but to use any violence to get what they want. Abortion is the extreme conclusion of a society that exalts individual autonomy above all else: solidarity, duty, charity, morality. The feminist writer Naomi Wolf, to her credit, admitted as much in an essay in the New Republic the year after Mother Teresa gave her speech. She wrote, "Abortion should be legal. It is sometimes even necessary. Sometimes the mother must be able to decide that the fetus, in its full humanity, must die." Her argument was ghastly, but at least it was honest about the humanity of the baby. She acknowledged that the baby is alive and human, but babies limit the individual autonomy of women in a way that they do not for men. And so Wolf believed that if women are to become truly equal with and indistinguishable from men, then they need the right to kill their own children in all of their humanity. I suspect this too may explain why young Americans are becoming more and more pro-life. Because radical autonomy is miserable, and mid-century feminism has been a disaster for our nation. It has been a disaster, especially for women who, according to the social scientists, take it for what it's worth. I don't pay attention to social scientists unless they back up my views, so I'll cite them when it's helpful. Women have become consistently less happy since the supposed achievements of feminism, both in absolute terms and relative to men. The politics of radical autonomy has not inaugurated a new age of Aquarius in which everyone is free and equal and content. On the contrary, it has led to the breakdown of community in all of its forms. From the nation all the way down to the family, it has led to social isolation. It has led to a slow but steady national death in which we live shorter lives, kill ourselves more frequently, and fail to reproduce. A complete and total disaster. I think younger Americans are less persuaded by the radical feminists that brought us legal abortion. This might be because radical feminists are extremely unpleasant people who shriek and howl at every moment of the day. That might be why. I don't know. That would be one inkling I have as to why. We saw that juxtaposition last month at the oral arguments in the Dobbs case. You had well-behaved and smiling pro-lifers saying their prayers on one side, and then you had these hordes of obscene and hysterical harpies and satyrs who were shrieking profanities on the other. It could not have been more different. Which of those two kinds of people do you want to be when you grow up? I have my answer. I don't know. The fact that most, if not all, pro-life demonstrations involve prayer is important too. Some pro-lifers have suggested that we make our arguments without reference to religion. Religion is too divisive, they say. It's better to stick with secular arguments, using the vague language of science or human rights or appealing to the social goods of not killing 1 million babies a year. The secular arguments only go so far. If we only speak in secular terms, we are giving a major advantage to abortion supporters because those arguments fail to articulate why human life must be protected, namely because we are made in the image of God. Thomas Aquinas, he got beat. He got beat by God. I think that's probably fair. He would have it no other way. That's right. That's why. Modern sonograms are extremely impressive, but they cannot show you the soul. A blood test will not tell you what a person is worth. The most powerful electron microscope in the world will not teach you why it is wrong to commit murder. Science is all well and good. I suppose we're supposed to follow it these days. That's what they say. Follow it. Follow the science. Science is only the handmaid of philosophy. Philosophy is the handmaid of theology. Physics can show us that babies in the womb are babies, but it takes metaphysics to teach us why it is wrong to kill them. I suspect that younger Americans are moving in the direction of life because they are swimming in a culture of lies and want to grab hold of some truth. In recent decades, our culture has insisted that basic truths are cruel and oppressive and that lies will set us free. Truth about sex, truth about biology, truth about the moral and the civil law, all must be denied, we are told, to be free. The reality is exactly the opposite. It is lies that are cruel and destructive, and it is the truth that will set you free. Americans, and especially younger Americans, are waking up to this half-century of error. We have tested the theory. We have exalted licentiousness over liberty and lies over truth for half a century. The results have been an unmitigated disaster. At the very heart of this half-century of decline is Roe versus Wade, the worst decision in the history of the Supreme Court, and legal abortion, the single worst crime ever committed in this country. We are now on the brink of correcting the first error. When Roe is overturned, it will not constitute the beginning of the end of the pro-life movement. Rather, it will constitute the end of the beginning. We will be moving to a new phase. We will march forward toward our ultimate goal, the abolition of abortion in every state, in every county, in every town in this country, and the protection of all human life from sea to shining sea. Thank you very much. Thank you.